Silence is sometimes the most powerful scream. That line hits, doesn't it, my friends? Because while most people believe power comes from words, arguments, explanations, or shouting to prove a point, the truth is, it often comes from the opposite. It comes from silence, the kind of silence that doesn't beg to be understood, doesn't try to be heard, and doesn't wait for anyone to come back. Now, before we get into it, do me a favor. Press that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me till the end. Because what I'm about to share with you might just change how you see everything, your relationships, your dignity, even your future. And if you leave halfway, you'll miss the part that makes the whole message click. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in a crowded room, voices everywhere, people trying to outshout each other. Everyone's yelling, waving their arms, desperate to be noticed. But then, one person quietly walks out. They don't slam the door. They don't announce they're leaving. They just walk away and never return. Who do you think leaves the biggest mark on that room? Not the loudest voice, not the one who argued the hardest, but the one who chose silence and stayed gone. That, my friends, is the kind of silence we're talking about today. The silence that isn't temporary, the silence that isn't a tactic, the silence that says, without a single word, this is over. I'm done. I won't be back. Most people get silence wrong. They think silence is weakness, that it's avoidance, that it means you've lost the fight. They'll tell you, speak up, fight harder, prove your point. But let me break that lie right now. Sometimes silence is the only proof you need. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And silence, real silence, the kind that lasts forever, is self-mastery in action. It's not about ignoring them. It's about no longer needing them. Let's be honest, my friends. Many of us have been stuck in cycles we thought we couldn't escape. The cycle of giving more than we received. The cycle of chasing someone who only ran faster. The cycle of explaining ourselves to someone who was never really listening. At first, we told ourselves it was love. We told ourselves that if we just held on a little longer, if we just proved ourselves one more time, maybe they'd see our worth. But you know what that really was? A trap. A prison disguised as loyalty. And the key to that prison door wasn't louder words, it was silence. Think of silence as a sword, my friends. A sword that doesn't slash in anger, but cuts the rope that tied you to the same painful loop. Every time you refuse to respond, every time you resist the urge to explain, every time you choose peace over noise, you're swinging that sword. You're cutting yourself free. Here's the funny part. At first, they don't even notice. They think you're just sulking. They think you're playing the same game, waiting for them to chase. They laugh it off. They roll their eyes. But as the days turn into weeks and the weeks into months, the silence grows heavy. Heavier than any words you could have said, because absence has a strange way of becoming presence. You're not there anymore, but suddenly you're everywhere, in the questions that echo in their mind, in the regrets they can't silence, in the truth they can no longer deny. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That's the essence of choosing silence. You don't waste your time saying what isn't respected. You don't waste your energy doing what isn't valued. You don't waste your life begging for what was never truly yours. So, my friends, this message isn't just about silence. It's about strength. It's about dignity. It's about recovery. Because silence is not about them. It's about you. It's the moment you stop chasing someone else's recognition and start building your own peace. And trust me, that's when everything changes. So if you're ready to step into that kind of power, type this in the comments right now. Silence is strength. Write it, show it, declare it. Because your silence isn't weakness, it's your rebirth. Press that like button, subscribe for more, and stay with me till the end, because the deeper we go, the more you'll see. The silence you thought was empty is actually the loudest declaration you'll ever make. Number 1. The many faces of silence. Nothing is more powerful than a man who chooses not to speak when silence says everything. Let that sit with you for a moment, my friends, because we live in a world where people are addicted to noise, arguments, texts, replies, explanations, and endless attempts to prove themselves. But there comes a point where silence becomes louder than any word ever could. That's the silence we're talking about. The silence isn't a pause, but a decision. The silence that is final. The silence that transforms everything. Picture this with me. Imagine a storm. The thunder is loud, lightning cracks across the sky, and rain pounds the earth with fury. That's the fight, the argument, the noise of two people battling for control. But then, the storm ends. The clouds part. And the quiet is almost unsettling. That quiet is what breaks them. Not the thunder, not the lightning, but the silence that follows. Because silence forces reflection. Silence forces truth. And when they realize your silence isn't temporary but permanent, it unsettles them in ways shouting never could. Now here's what goes on in their mind. At first, they'll tell themselves a story. They'll say they're just upset. They'll be back. They've always come back. They'll laugh it off. They'll assume you're playing a game. They'll convince themselves that they still hold the power, that they still have control. Because in the past, they were right. You did come back. You did break first. You did explain yourself even when you didn't have to. And that gave them a false sense of security. They believed you would never walk away for good. That illusion was their safety net. But what happens when the illusion shatters? What happens when days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and your silence doesn't break? That's when fear creeps in. Quietly, slowly, almost like water dripping on stone. At first it's easy to ignore, but over time the drops carve deep lines. They begin to wonder, wait, are they serious? Did I push them too far? Did I actually lose them? That's when panic sets in, because the silence they thought was weakness suddenly feels like strength, and that strength scares them. Let's break one of the biggest lies right now. People think silence means surrender, that if you don't speak up, you've lost, that if you don't argue back, you're defeated, that if you don't respond, you're hiding. But that's not the truth. Real silence, the silence of forever, isn't about running away. It's about refusing to keep bleeding your energy into someone who never valued it. It's not weakness, it's self-respect. It's not surrender, it's mastery. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And isn't that exactly what silence is? It's the choice to master yourself, to stop letting their noise dictate your peace. When you stop reacting, you reclaim the one thing they never thought you would: control. But let's be honest, folks, it's not easy. Silence is hard. It's harder than arguing, harder than explaining, harder than begging. Why? Because silence leaves you alone with your own thoughts. And in the beginning, those thoughts are brutal. They'll whisper, maybe if you just said one more thing, they'd understand. Maybe if you sent one more text, they'd change. Maybe if you gave one more chance, they'd finally value you. That's the trap. That's the chain. That's the cycle you've been stuck in. But here's where you rise. You don't give in to those whispers. You don't chase one more time. You don't break your silence to feed their pride. Instead, you sit with the discomfort. You endure the ache. You resist the urge. And every moment you do, you grow stronger. Every moment you hold the line, you build discipline. Every moment you refuse to return, you prove to yourself that you are no longer a prisoner of your own need for validation. That's the hard truth. Freedom doesn't come from them changing. Freedom comes from you refusing to play the game. Imagine a chessboard. For years you've been moving pieces, trying to win against someone who changes the rules whenever they feel like it. You've sacrificed your queen, lost your knights, and bent over backward to keep the game alive. But what if the only way to win isn't to play harder, but to stand up, push the board aside, and walk away? That's what silence is. It's not losing the game, it's refusing to play a game that was rigged from the start. Now think about this. How many times did they push you away, only for you to return? How many times did they go silent, only for you to break first? How many times did you explain yourself to ears that were never really listening? That pattern is why they never believed your silence would last. And that's why when it does, it hits harder than anything else ever could. Because it forces them to face a reality they never prepared for. You're gone. Not temporarily, not conditionally, forever. And here's the beauty of it. You don't even need them to realize it. Because this silence isn't about them anymore. It's about you. It's about choosing peace over chaos. It's about choosing dignity over desperation. It's about choosing yourself over someone who never truly chose you. That's why this silence is different. It's not a strategy. It's not revenge. It's recovery. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And make no mistake, it takes bravery to stay silent. It takes bravery to walk away without a speech, without a scene, without demanding closure. It takes bravery to cut off the rope and trust yourself enough to walk forward alone. But that's the kind of bravery that sets you free. So here's what I want you to do, my friends. Write it in the comments right now. Silence is freedom. Show yourself, show me, show the world around you that you understand the power of choosing silence. Because once you master this, nothing can hold you hostage again. And stay with me, because what comes next is even more eye-opening. If you thought silence was just the absence of words, wait until you see how it becomes the loudest presence they will ever feel. That's where we're headed, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Number 2, the cycle that kept you trapped. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That old quote cuts deep because it speaks to the truth many avoid, the truth that keeps them stuck in the same painful loop. My friends, that's what the cycle was. The endless spin of arguments, apologies, promises, disappointments, and repeats. A carousel of pain that looked like love but felt like exhaustion. And for too long, you were the one who kept it turning. Picture a wheel stuck in the mud. You press the gas, the wheel spins, dirt flies, the engine roars, but the car doesn't move an inch. That was the cycle. You gave more energy, more effort, more hope, but nothing changed. Because cycles don't end when the other person suddenly transforms. Cycles end when you decide to step off the wheel, and silence, true, final silence, is the act of stepping off. Let's be real. At first, the cycle felt unbreakable. You convinced yourself that maybe this time would be different. Maybe if you explained yourself better, they'd finally listen. Maybe if you proved your loyalty again, they'd finally value it. Maybe if you forgave once more, they'd finally stop taking advantage. Those maybes became the chains that bound you, each one a whisper of false hope that kept you locked in place. But here's the lie. It was never about saying the right words, proving your love, or holding on long enough. The cycle was designed to drain you, not fulfill you. You were feeding energy into a black hole, expecting light to come back out. And no matter how much you gave, it was never enough. Because the cycle was never broken by them. It was broken by you when you chose silence. Think of a fire that never dies because you keep throwing wood onto it. Every apology you gave, every text you sent, every argument you engaged in, it was fuel. And they got comfortable knowing that no matter how high the flames rose, you'd always throw in another log to keep it burning. But the moment you stopped, the moment you held back your words, your explanations, your pleas, that fire had nothing left to feed on, and slowly it burned itself out. Now, why was it so difficult to step away? Because cycles are addictive. Yes, addictive. They play on your need for closure, for recognition, for validation. You kept chasing the high of being heard, of finally being understood, of finally being seen. And every time they gave you a breadcrumb, one kind word, one half-hearted apology, one promise to change, you mistook it for a feast. But it wasn't. It was bait to keep you spinning. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the heart of breaking the cycle. You couldn't control them. You couldn't force them to value you. You couldn't twist yourself into enough shapes to earn respect. But you could control your decision to stop playing a rigged game, to stop pouring your soul into someone who treated it like spare change, to stop believing that love meant endless suffering. My friends, silence is the weapon that breaks the cycle because it starves it. The arguments need your words. The drama needs your reactions. The manipulation needs your energy. Without those, the cycle collapses. And yes, at first, it feels brutal, because walking away isn't just leaving them, it's leaving behind the version of yourself that tolerated the loop. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels like tearing skin. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. Imagine a bird trapped in a cage that was always left unlocked. For years it stayed inside, thinking the bars were unbreakable, until one day it finally realized the door had always been open. That's you. The cycle made you believe you couldn't leave, but the truth is, you always could. And silence is you finally flying through that door. So understand this. The cycle didn't end because they changed. It ended because you did. It ended because you found the courage to stop repeating what was killing you. It ended because you realized that dignity means more than being heard, that peace means more than being noticed, that freedom means more than clinging to someone who never chose you. This is why silence is not avoidance, it is liberation. And the moment you chose it, the cycle that drained you finally broke. Write this in the comments right now. The cycle is broken. Show yourself, show the world. Because once you declare it, you're not just saying words, you're living truth. And when they realize the silence is forever, they'll feel the loss. But you, my friends, you'll feel the freedom. And that is only the beginning. Number 3, why they expect you to break first. They always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. Andy Warhol said that, and it cuts right into the heart of why they expect you to break first. Because in their mind, you never really change. You bend, you fold, you come back. They count on it. They build their pride on it. They bet against your strength because history taught them you'd always lose to your own emotions. Think about it. For so long, the pattern was predictable. They pulled away, you reached out. They went silent. You filled the gap with words. They dismissed you, and you fought harder to prove your worth. That pattern wasn't just something they noticed. It became their security blanket. They could treat you however they pleased and still believe you'd return. Why? Because in their story, you were the one who never walked away for good. It's like a gambler who keeps winning small bets at a crooked table. The game is rigged, but as long as the player keeps getting rewarded, they assume the house will always pay. That's how they saw you. They assumed no matter how badly they played, you'd always cover the loss. And when you finally don't, that's when the shock hits. Because they've mistaken your patience for permanence. Let's dig deeper into their mind. When your silence begins, their first thought is, this won't last. They'll be back. Why? Because in the past, you always were. Every argument ended with you chasing. Every distance ended with you bridging the gap. Every rejection ended with you proving yourself again. They took that history and made it their truth. So when silence enters the picture, they don't see it as final. They see it as another round of the same game. But here's where the cracks appear. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. The phone stays dark. the messages don't come, and their certainty begins to erode. Slowly, doubts creep in. Wait, why haven't they broken yet? Why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they chasing? And those questions eat away at their pride, because what they thought was guaranteed now feels uncertain. The lie they told themselves, that you would always break first, starts to collapse, and fear takes its place. Fear that maybe you've grown stronger. Fear that maybe you've changed the script. Fear that maybe the safety net they counted on has disappeared for good. Let's pause and break that lie wide open. Folks, listen carefully. You are not predictable. You are not permanent in someone else's story. You are not bound to a role they assigned you. That was the trap. They believed they could control you because you trained them to believe it, by always returning, always forgiving, always breaking your silence before they broke theirs. But that training ends today, because silence, when it's forever, rewrites the entire narrative. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it." And what could be truer than choosing yourself over the endless noise? What could be righter than refusing to keep a role that only drained your dignity? They thought you'd break because you always had. But the moment you don't, you expose the truth. The power was never theirs. It was always yours. You just didn't claim it. Yes, it's difficult. Let's not sugarcoat it. Silence tests you more than it tests them, because in the beginning, every part of you itches to reach out. The old habit screams, break it, just once, just one more message. But every time you resist, you're showing them something they never believed possible. You're not the same anymore, and that realization shakes them to their core. Picture a castle built on sand. From the outside, it looks impressive. Towers, gates, walls. But all it takes is the tide rolling in, and the whole thing collapses. Their confidence, their pride, their assumption that you'd always come back, that was the castle. Your silence is the tide. At first gentle, almost unnoticed, but then unstoppable, washing away everything they thought was secure. And here's the beauty. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to post about it. You don't need to tell them, "I've changed." Your silence says it all. Every day you hold the line is a message louder than words. Every day you don't return proves that you're not who you used to be. Every day you choose peace over chaos shows that you are stronger than they ever imagined. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And when you refuse to break first, you prove mastery over the one thing they counted on, your emotions. They expected you to beg. They expected you to plead. They expected you to chase, but you did none of it. And that, my friends, is freedom. So take this truth with you. Their expectations do not define your reality. Their disbelief does not dictate your strength. Their shock is simply proof that you've grown. Write it down in the comments right now. I will not break. Let it be your declaration, your shield, your reminder. Because the moment they realize you've chosen silence not as a pause but as forever, the entire story changes. They feel the loss. You feel the freedom. And that freedom is only just beginning to rise. Number 4, the weight of permanent silence. Absence sharpens love. Presence strengthens it. That's what Thomas Fuller once said, but there's a darker side to absence that people rarely admit. It also exposes regret, amplifies loss, and presses down on the mind, heavier than words ever could. That's the weight of permanent silence, my friends. Not the kind of silence that waits for a reply, but the kind that never intends to send one. Not the kind that gives space, but the kind that gives closure. That silence doesn't fade with time. It grows heavier. Picture this. At first, they shrug it off. They tell themselves, it's nothing. They're just sulking. They'll be back like always. And for a while, that belief shields them. It protects their pride. They scroll through their phone. They distract themselves. They laugh it away. But silence is patient. Silence doesn't demand to be noticed right away. It builds. Like a shadow that stretches longer as the sun sets, silence grows harder to ignore as days slip into weeks and weeks into months. Then comes the moment, a quiet morning. They reach for their phone, almost out of habit, expecting to see your name light up the screen. But it doesn't. They scroll back through the messages, realizing the last conversation feels like it belongs to another lifetime. And that's when the weight starts pressing in, not in one crushing blow, but in small, suffocating reminders. The weight shows up in the silence between their own thoughts. It creeps in when they remember how quickly you used to respond, how easily you once forgave, how often you reached out first. Now, all they see is nothing. No reply, no call, no effort. That absence becomes a mirror, forcing them to face what they never wanted to admit. You're gone, and this time it isn't temporary. Let's break a lie here. People love to tell themselves they can outlast your silence, that they can wait you out until you fold, until you get weak, until you reach for them again. But permanent silence doesn't give them that comfort. It doesn't break. It doesn't bend. It doesn't play the game. And the longer it lasts, the louder it becomes. Imagine a dripping faucet. 1 drop doesn't matter. 10 drops are an annoyance. But 1,000 drops in the quiet of night, that sound becomes impossible to ignore. That's what your silence does. At first, it's brushed off, but with time, it echoes, it gnaws, it demands their attention without ever asking for it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And isn't that what this silence is? It's not revenge, it's release. You're not ignoring them to punish. You're not withholding to wound. You're simply living free while they're left to wrestle with their own thoughts. That's why it weighs so heavily. It forces them to face themselves without the distraction of your words. But let's be real, folks. This silence isn't easy for you either. In the beginning, it feels like carrying a boulder uphill. Every moment you resist the urge to break it feels heavy. But here's the difference. Your weight lightens with time. Theirs grows heavier. For you, silence becomes peace. For them, silence becomes torment. That's the paradox. Think of it like 2 sides of the same coin. On your side, silence is the lifting of chains. You sleep better, think clearer, feel stronger. On their side, silence is the tightening of chains. Their pride bends, their certainty cracks, their mind replays the choices that pushed you away, and the longer it goes on, the heavier it gets. That's why permanent silence is powerful, because unlike words, it can't be argued with. Unlike threats, it can't be dismissed. Unlike noise, it doesn't fade. It just sits there, undeniable, immovable, final. And in time, they realize something brutal. They can't call you back with a snap of their fingers anymore. The safety net they took for granted is gone. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that's what makes this silence so heavy for them. It's the proof that you mastered yourself, that you resisted the urge to chase, that you refused to explain, that you no longer needed them to recognize your worth. That realization hits harder than any words ever could. So remember this, the weight of permanent silence is not yours to carry, it's theirs. Your burden lightens as theirs grows heavier. Your peace rises as their regret deepens. And in that exchange, you win, not by punishing, but by freeing yourself. Write it in the comments right now. My silence is power. Show the world, show yourself, that you understand the strength in walking away without a word. Because when they finally feel the full weight of your silence, they'll realize what they lost. But you, my friends, you'll already be free. Number 5, the Stoic principle of finality. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Those words are simple but heavy, my friends, because most people fear endings. They cling to what's familiar, even if it hurts, just to avoid the silence that follows. But Stoicism teaches something radically different. Endings are not your enemy. Endings are the doorway to your freedom, and that is the principle of finality, the ability to say, this chapter is closed. This door will not reopen. This silence is not a pause, it is forever. Now let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're walking through a long hallway filled with doors. Some are cracked open, some are wide, some you keep peeking back into, even though what's inside drains you. You walk forward a little, but then you circle back, open the same door, and step inside again. That's what most people do in relationships. They leave, but they don't really leave. They close the door, but leave the key under the mat. They announce, "I'm done," but secretly hope for a knock. And that's why they suffer, because without finality, there is no peace. Here's the lie that traps so many. If I keep the door slightly open, maybe one day things will change. Maybe if I'm patient, they'll become who I needed them to be. Maybe if I show them I'll always be here, they'll finally value me. But my friends, that's not loyalty. That's self-destruction dressed up as hope. And the Stoics saw right through it. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Leaving the door cracked is neither right nor true. It only prolongs the cycle that broke you. Finality, on the other hand, is power. It is silence that doesn't ache for a reply. It is walking away without turning back. It is closing the door, locking it, and throwing the key into the ocean. That's why it feels so heavy, because real finality is rare. Most people storm out after an argument, swear they're done, but when the emotions settle, they go back. That's not finality. That's drama. True finality is born in calm, in clarity, in quiet strength. It's not the slam of a door. It's the stillness that says, this story is over. Think about nature. Seasons change whether we're ready or not. Winter doesn't apologize for ending autumn. Spring doesn't beg for permission to replace the cold. Finality is written into the laws of life itself. But when it comes to people, we resist it. We want endless summers, permanent springs, relationships that last even when they've already withered. And so we suffer, because we fight against the principle of finality instead of embracing it. But here's where the Stoics stood firm. Dignity is found in letting go. Seneca said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." He didn't say some ends. He said every, meaning that your future depends on your ability to end what no longer serves you. And permanent silence is the tool. It's not petty, not cruel, not revenge. It's the discipline to cut ties cleanly so your spirit can finally breathe. Now, I won't lie to you. It's not easy. It will hurt. It will feel unnatural. You'll wake up some nights with the urge to check your phone, to send that one message, to break the silence just to feel their presence again. But every time you resist, you're proving something deeper. You're proving that your worth is not tied to their recognition. You're proving that your peace means more than their attention. You're proving that you have mastered yourself. Imagine a soldier walking off the battlefield. The fight is over. The ground is littered with the scars of war. He doesn't keep circling back, hoping for one more clash. He lays down his sword and walks away because the war is no longer worth fighting. That's you. Silence is your surrender, not to them, but to peace. You've fought long enough. Now it's time to leave the battlefield behind. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And finality is self-mastery in action. It's the refusal to be dragged back into games, into noise, into endless explanations. It's the courage to let endings end. And when you do, something shifts. You stop waiting for closure, because the silence is the closure. You stop waiting for their apology, because your peace is the apology. You stop waiting for their recognition, because your dignity is recognition enough. So let this be your reminder. You do not need to fear endings. You do not need to resist finality. You do not need to reopen doors that only led you to pain. The Stoic principle of finality is clear. What's over is over, and that is where strength is found. Type it in the comments right now. The door is closed. Let that be your affirmation, your declaration, your freedom. Because when they finally realize your silence is forever, they will feel the sting of loss. But you'll feel the peace of a man who has embraced finality. And that peace, my friends, is worth more than anything you left behind. Number 6. Pain into discipline, silence into power. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius wrote those words centuries ago, but they feel like they were meant for this exact moment. Because let's face it, my friends, silence is not easy. In the beginning, silence feels like pain. It feels like loneliness, like loss, like something inside you has been ripped out and you're left with an echo where love used to live. But here's the truth, most men never learn. That very pain, when you refuse to run from it, becomes discipline. And that discipline, when it takes root, transforms into power. Think of silence as a forge. A forge is hot, suffocating, unbearable to stand in. If you threw yourself into it unprepared, it would consume you. But when a blade is put into that same fire, when it endures the heat and the hammer, it doesn't break. It becomes stronger, sharper, unshakable. That's you, my friends. Every moment you hold the silence, every time you resist the urge to reach out, every night you wrestle with the ache instead of giving in, you are being forged, not destroyed, forged. At first, the questions come. What if I just send one message? What if I explain myself one more time? What if I remind them of everything I gave? Those questions are the whispers of old habits, the chains of the cycle trying to pull you back. And make no mistake, giving in would feel easier in the short term. Breaking silence feels like relief in the moment. But relief is not freedom. Relief is not recovery. Relief is just feeding the fire that already burned you. So instead, you choose discipline. Discipline is saying no to the text at midnight. Discipline is resisting the temptation to check if they've noticed your absence. Discipline is standing in the discomfort and letting it burn without flinching. And slowly, something shifts. The pain that once felt unbearable starts to feel like fuel. The silence that once hurt begins to feel like control, and the loneliness that once hollowed you out begins to fill with strength. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That mastery isn't found in chasing, explaining, or begging. It's found in the quiet moments where you stare temptation in the face and refuse to bow. It's found in the long nights where you want to break but don't. It's found in the mornings when you wake up and realize your first thought isn't about them anymore. It's about you, your purpose, your growth. That's the transformation. Pain into discipline, silence into power. Think of a river. Left uncontrolled, it floods, destroys, sweeps everything away. But when a dam channels that same water, it generates power. That's your pain. That's your silence. Left unchecked, it can drown you. But when you discipline yourself to channel it, it fuels you. It drives you to hit the gym instead of hitting send. It pushes you to build your craft instead of building another argument. It focuses your mind on your mission instead of your memories. And here's the paradox. While you're growing stronger in silence, they're growing weaker in regret. While you're mastering discipline, they're replaying the past. While you're rising, they're sinking, because silence is not absence, it's transformation. You are no longer the man who needs to be heard to prove his worth. You are the man who lets silence speak for him. But let me warn you, folks, it's not about revenge. It's not about making them suffer. That's not what silence is for. This silence is medicine, not a weapon. It's not about hurting them. It's about healing you. It's about reclaiming every piece of yourself you gave away. It's about proving, not to them, but to yourself, that you are enough without their validation. That's real freedom. That's real power. So let me leave you with this thought. Every time you hold the silence, you're not just breaking an old habit, you're building a new man. Every moment of discipline is another brick laid in the foundation of your peace. Every second of restraint is another reminder that your power doesn't come from their approval, but from your own strength. Now it's your turn. Type it in the comments right now. Silence is my power. Write it, show it, declare it, because the world needs more men who understand that silence is not weakness, it's strength, it's discipline, it's recovery. And before you go, my friends, don't forget, press that like button, hit subscribe, and share this message with someone who needs it. Because together we rise beyond the noise. Together we prove that silence, when chosen forever, is not the end. It's the beginning of freedom.